Okay, so today we're going to talk about this that little video that you saw. Relatively simple project. I got my idea from watching Rocket Lasso talk about the new features in 2023. In particular, the convex hull, the thicken, and the shrink wrap example that he did. So I, of course, took my own letters, which is my baseball team here, and I also looked up their font. So if you look at their jerseys, this is the font they use. Now, very interesting how he did this. The first thing I'd like to talk about is the instances here. You can see, if you go under here, I use a connect instance, which is from this connect. Now, what an instance is basically a copy without the geometry. So to save memory, especially when you render it and so on. Now, but this remains, this has to remain. If you turn this off, it loses you don't have it. And above this, you have a remesh with a soft body and, of course, material. Now, the soft body, let's take a look at that. We put poles in here. And what the poles do is keep it stiff when we're running the animation. In addition to this, and this is important, with pins, that keeps it where it in place. So if you have pin, if you don't have the pins, the animation's going to it's going to like move. The letters are going to move around because they're getting squished when you do the shrink wrap effect. The pin is the secret to keeping it in place. So that's basically how these letters were constructed. You make the convex hull a child of it, and you can see that. And a convex hull basically is like a cover over it. Now, if you do this, and we'll see this on like something like a basic shape, like a block or something of that nature, you're not even going to be able to tell because it's just one thing. It's just going to cover it all. The other thing that is here is a displacer to give it some crinkly in it, make it not flat. So if you turn the displacer off like this, you'll get a totally flat thing, more boring. So that is the purpose of the displacer. And it's kind of hard if you see, yeah. And the thickens are to give this a little bit of thickness. And there are two of them. One that goes against the normals, which is set to -100. And I believe this one is set, just regular. Although I'm not sure if he may have set it to +1,000, go towards the normals. And that's how you impact which direction it's moving. So also make it cloth. And I'm going to show you on some simpler examples so you get more of an idea. Because the problem with this example, it's an excellent example. And like I said, I followed this kind of stuff, tried to follow him relatively closely because it is a little precise. Now, of course, the important thing here, too, is, I think this is the one. Now notice also you can see I cached everything. Is the one here, this connect, which connects essentially the whole convex hole and the letters and everything together. This is where the shrink wrap comes in. On the balloon, what you do is it says move the pressure to this over these number of frames. So you may, depending on what you have, you may have to adjust this because this is too low. He got it to 0.1, but I have a thicker letters, different letters. And so if I made it too thin, what happens, you get weird bulging and it doesn't work right. So this is a number that if you're doing a balloon effect where you're doing a shrink wrap, you're going to have to adjust for your particular thing. So the baseballs are pretty basic. I had to play around with how to get something kind of look like the baseball stitching. Not great, but very simple spinning effect on here. And let's see. And then you have your pyro. Now, I only use density and color. I don't even know if I needed velocity, but I wanted to get some movement here. Now, for redshift, you have to create their pyro volume tag and put this on here. And what this allows you to, let's see, if you go look at the material itself, see if it, any volume can use density, these things, density absorption, emission, and, you can impact how much fuel. We're just interested in smoke here. So it was really density that I was using. When this pyro I made like a big rectangle from a cube. This is where you kind of control things. And ultimately, this color is for the viewport. It's not what you're going to see in the actual render. And you can do some noise. This is where you control all of this kind of stuff. With this particular item that has the tag. So you can control, have some control of the density, but the main place it is controlled is on this pyro output where you have the pyro scene and pyro. So this is where you can control things like rate of, all the different aspects of the pyro, the fuel burning rate, the dissipation, and different things. So this has, temperature. This really controls like the solver, whereas this here controls more how it's things like whether you're using temperature, whether you're using fuel, noise. So these are the two things you're going to have to be aware of when you're working with the pyro. And of course you can cache this. So it's a good idea to cache. It makes your renders go faster. And I use Redshift for this one. I was not happy with the with how the Octane looked. Now, important thing with any of these renders is speed. If you look under renderer, under Redshift, it has these certain settings, which can, whether you see how you see the eyebrows. This is more interface. With the render, this is where you control it. Now, what I found worked the best is starting with the basic here. And I ended up going to custom, but you can start with something like medium, see what you like, what you don't like, if you're getting noise. And it's best to deal with noise specifically. So if you need more samples with reflection, you can add that here. Lights. Lights are a good place to add samples because they impact render time less. You're looking for noise. And so I had to balance and get it set so that each page or each frame would render in a reasonable amount of time. I mean, you can get something from 2 minutes or a minute all the way up to 20 minutes if your settings are not right. Sometimes you need that if you're doing a super high quality render, in which case you'll probably need some kind of farm or some kind of rendering setup to handle something like that. But in this case, I got it down to a reasonable level. Now let's talk some more about these things. So this example here, I have a cube with a convex hull, and you can see if I turn, and I have a thicken. So if you turn off the thicken, you should see, let's see what we're gonna see here. I turn off, see, I'm not seeing too much here. Oh, I know. This example, what the focus is here is when I run this, it should, you see how this sags and shrink wraps around it? Again, I have soft body on the cube. I have a plane here with collider. And on this connect is where I do the balloon. And here, I believe, is where I have my poles. But the main thing here is the balloon, and I had to play with it to make it 0.7. If it was too big, again, if it's too small, you're going to get weird bulging. And you can see. You can also see if I'm going to show you on here this example, I believe. So this is a good example to see what's going on. So let's turn off everything. Okay, so if I turn off the cloth, you can see it gets stiff like it's a box. If I turn off the thicken, it gets smaller because I have thicken at 10 centimeters so you can actually see it. And of course the convex hull is the convex hull. You turn that on, you get the hole around the letters. So it's like if you were putting a gift in a box. So it's putting the letters in a box. Then the thickens them, makes them bigger. The cloth, it gives them some thickness, and I think I set it, yeah, as I said, 10 millimeters so you can see it. That gives them kind of this not so stiff feeling. And then our displacer, you can see a little bit of displacement here. If I turn this off, you don't, let's see, turn this on. And the random field, you see I turn that on because what's happening here is it's in the field now. Watch if you see you get, it randomly impacts this. I turn it off. Let me see something. The displacer itself is using noise. Let's see something if okay. Well, we'll change that back to what it was. But you're getting some, if you just have the convex hull, you get this. And when you put on the displacer with a field, you get this kind of thing. So that's how these pieces pull together to give you the covering on these letters. Now, what I didn't do here is I did not use, like you can do something on the text itself, and what they did is, no, that is not what I wanted. What they did, and this is something they put, see, on the text, they put it under a connect object. That's what they did. They did not. So let me get a connect object in here. Here's the connect object. We're going to move this down under thicken, and we're going to move our text and everything under it. What that means is the letters should be as one. So let's turn off all this other stuff. And what happens, we got weld. Let's look at the difference here. This connect object. Weld, textures. Okay. Because this is what's connecting. Why this is not. Well, also these letters are somewhat connected. Let's see something. I'm going to move this out. We're going to move this down. We're going to do the instance. We're going to move the instance under the thicken and move the convex hull under. Yeah. So by making, it looks like if I make an instance of the connect and then I put the convex hull under here, I get it as one. Kind of displaces it, everything 16 millimeters. And the random is what makes it interesting because, as you can see, as you move this, it kind of makes it jiggle. So by breaking it down to this kind of simple example, you can understand more what each of these parts does for the example. Let's see. I don't think I have any soft bodies in here, but this is just more how the displacer, the thicken, the convex hull, and the connect instance work together by creating the instance. See, this is interesting to me, that if you put the convex hull under the connect, I'm going to make another, let me copy this. Okay, now these should be connected. And so, okay, it does make it as one. So you can see, because they're connected, and doesn't. So the convex hull is under this connect object. And it gets a little weird because that's why it's a little cleaner when you make this in, as one thing. So if we pulled this out and we did something like this, connect objects, and we put the convex hull under here, turn these off, and turn the convex hull off, you can see it's covering the whole thing. So this is great for, shrink wrap. Or you can do something very interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen the balloons, right, where you had something like, I don't know, a Mickey Mouse with the mouse ears as like an inner thing, and then you have a balloon around it. Well, you could do something like that with this as well, I would think. So you would just, instead of going, putting the soft body, right, we have the soft body on the, I think this is the one with the balloon, on over this way, on, you would make it go expand, and then you would see a balloon-like effect. Well, that could be interesting. Let's see what happens. Let's make this 1.5. And let's see what we get. Oh, it's not going to do anything because I have the caches on. So let's, on here, I have this saved. I'm not going to delete the cache. What I want to do on here is just turn it off. For now, so it doesn't use the cache. I'm not going to recache anything, or I'm going to mess everything up. Let's see what happens. Because now we got the balloon is supposed to expand rather than contract. And we'll see how much it expands. Notice it's not shrinking, so that's good. I don't know what kind of expansion we're going to get. And then we'll take a render of the page and see what we got. So this is a little off the cuff here. Now, one other thing about ALVs while this is going, with rendering. If you use ALVs in your rendering, that could be used as a means of detecting where your problems are at. So I will show you that in a second. And then I want to finish up by talking very quickly about aces because I rendered this in aces, and let's see where, let's like get to at least frame 90 and see if we get anything that looks kind of balloon-like. So I guess I could show you this when if you go to edit render settings, you have this AOV, and if you click this, you can select things that like your beauty which is your beauty output, which is essentially your final render. But you've got everything, reflections, refractions, and that can be used in, well, you can also rebuild the beauty node through these. You can also use it to change, to enhance certain things. But you can also use them to look at them and see what the where the noise is. Is it in your reflections? Because you remember this, I'm going to stop this now, and we'll take a quick one page. We'll do render view, and hopefully you're seeing that. Yes, you are. And no, it's preparing. And I just want to see what we have, just out of curiosity. Now, one other thing, if you're rendering Octane, which is a render I use quite a bit, there is something called in the global settings, there's something called a global clamp, and that's set to like 1,000,000. Yeah, you don't need it as 1,000,000. Generally I set it to 1, and I can bring up another example and show you that real quick before we end on a final look at in DaVinci Resolve, which, by the way, just got an update to 18.5 if you use it. I have not installed it yet because I didn't want to mess anything up for this. But yeah, so we have a new version of Octane, and this is in Aces, but you can see it doesn't look like it expanded too much. Well, we'll see what it looks like. Remember, it's still doing the irradiance point cloud. You know what? Well, it's doing that. Let's take a look at this for a second, I think. Okay. So this is in DaVinci Resolve in the color. Now, I exported in Aces CT. So what I did here, I left the project settings for color, did not touch them. I have Aces 1.2. I set that. I said input transform is what I'm bringing in is Aces CG, and what I'm bringing out is Aces CCT. And then here I go from Aces CCT to Rec 709. In here is where you do your color. This is a corrector node here. So this is where I played around with the color to get it how I wanted it. In particular, I wanted this to be the appropriate orange and blue. And then we get all this here. Now I think the smoke may be a little overlit, but at any rate, the key point here is if you're using Aces, you set your transform from ACES CG to ACES CCT, which is the working transform of ACES. You do all your color correction between that and the transformation from CCT back to your final output. Of course, the advantage of ACES is that it allows you can change this. You can make it output in many different formats, whatever it may be. You can output different sRGB, which is probably the other one that you would most likely be using. So it gives you a lot of flexibility by putting it in this wider color space that lets you then also go to whatever result you want. So again, the flexibility, the wider color space, and I believe DaVinci Resolve, their color space is even bigger. So that's just how I did that. Now let's go back to here. You can start to see the Mets is like in a balloon kind of thing. Not quite what I wanted, but I would have wanted to see more balloon. But that's the general idea. You can have the hull blow up. Instead of shrink wrap, you go the other way, and it looks like the balloon and the balloon effect. And then maybe you put some, you start using some soft bodies and things of that nature, and make it lighter than air and so on, and you can have a balloon. So you can see this is not a fast render. I think my render times got to about 2 or 3 minutes towards the main part, although this looks like it's taking longer. So let me just show you the Octane one. Where's my final? Let's see, Octane one. I'm gonna just close this. You get the idea. No. And so this is the Octane one, and this is what I wanted to show you. That's very important if you're using Octane. I think it's in here. GI clamp 1. Why? Because if you use the default, which is 1,000,000, your render is going to take forever. Max samples, that impacts how fast you're going to have it. 1,000 even can take some time, and I think I moved this down to 128 or something. So just wanted to show you that. So hopefully this has been helpful. And if you found it helpful and you want to see more, then please put a like, subscribe, like, all that kind of stuff. But thank you for watching, and I will speak to you next time. Take care.